What happens when one of music's most elusive legends sits down for what should be a straightforward interview, but instead becomes a battleground of words, ego, and unresolved tension? The cameras are rolling, the lights are hot, and Ed Bradley is about to ask the questions that Bob Dylan has spent decades avoiding. This isn't just another celebrity interview. This is about to become one of the most uncomfortable conversations ever broadcast on television. Before we get into it, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below telling us what you think really happened here. Ed Bradley sits across from Bob Dylan in the studio, the iconic 60-minute stopwatch ticking in the background. The setup looks professional, clean, exactly what you'd expect. Bradley opens with a smile, his voice smooth and welcoming. "Bob, thank you for being here. I know you don't do many of these." Dylan nods, his expression neutral, almost blank. There's already something in his eyes, though. A guardedness that Bradley notices immediately. "Let's start with something simple," Bradley continues. "Your music has meant so much to so many people over the decades. When you sit down to write now, what drives you?" Dylan shifts in his seat. "What drives me? I don't know if I'd call it drive. That sounds too intentional. I just write." Bradley leans forward slightly. "But there has to be something, some inspiration, some feeling that makes you pick up the pen or the guitar. Does there?" Dylan's voice is flat, almost challenging. "Maybe I just do it because it's what I do. Not everything needs a deeper meaning, Ed." The room temperature seems to drop a degree. Bradley maintains his composure, that professional smile still in place, but there's a flicker of something in his eyes. Surprise, maybe. Or the realization that this interview might not go as smoothly as planned. "Fair enough," Bradley says, adjusting his approach. "Let me ask you this, then. You've been called the voice of a generation, a poet, a prophet. How do you feel about those labels?" Dylan lets out a short, humorless laugh. "I feel like they're words people use when they don't know what else to say. I'm a musician, Ed. I play songs. That's it. But surely you understand that your songs have had an impact beyond just music. They've influenced political movements, social change, the way people think about the world." "That's not my responsibility." Dylan's voice is sharper now. "I wrote songs. What people did with them, what they read into them, that's their business. I never asked to be anyone's voice or prophet, or whatever else they want to call me." Bradley pauses, choosing his next words carefully. "But you had to know, especially in the 60s, that songs like Blowing in the Wind, the times they are a-changin', these weren't just songs. To you maybe. To me, they were just songs I wrote." Dylan looks directly at Bradley now, his gaze intense. "You want me to say I set out to change the world? I didn't. I set out to write songs that felt true to me at the time. If people found meaning in them, great. But don't put that weight on me." The tension in the room is palpable now. Bradley's producer, watching from behind the cameras, shifts uncomfortably. This isn't hostile yet, but it's heading somewhere unpredictable. "Okay," Bradley says, his tone still measured but with a slight edge. "Let's talk about your transition from folk to electric. That moment at Newport Folk Festival, that was contentious. People felt betrayed. People felt a lot of things," Dylan says dismissively. "People always feel things about what I do. I can't control that. But it was a deliberate choice, wasn't it? You knew going electric would upset your folk purist fans. I knew I wanted to play electric guitar. That's all I knew. The rest of it, the drama, the outrage, that was everyone else's creation, not mine." Bradley presses on. "But you had to anticipate some reaction. You weren't naive." Dylan's jaw tightens. "What do you want me to say, Ed? That I calculated every move? That I sat around thinking about how to make people angry? I played the music I wanted to play. If that upset people, that's their problem, not mine." "Is it though?" Bradley asks. "When you build a career on being authentic, on connecting with people who believe in what you're saying, don't you owe them something?" "I don't owe anybody anything," Dylan snaps. "I made music. People bought it or they didn't. That's the transaction. I never promised to be what they wanted me to be." Bradley sits back slightly, reassessing. The interview is barely 15 minutes in, and already the atmosphere is charged. Dylan isn't being difficult exactly, but he's not giving Bradley anything to work with either. Every question is met with resistance. Every attempt to dig deeper is blocked. "Let me try something different," Bradley says. "Your lyrics, they're often cryptic, open to interpretation. Is that intentional?" Dylan shrugs. "Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Sometimes I know exactly what I mean. Sometimes I figure it out later. Sometimes I never do. That must be frustrating for fans trying to understand your work." "Why?" Why does everyone need to understand everything? Can't a song just be a song? Can't words just exist without needing to be decoded like some kind of puzzle? But you're a storyteller, Bob. Stories have meanings. Do they? Or do we just assign meanings to them because we're uncomfortable with ambiguity? Bradley pauses, then decides to shift gears entirely. Let's talk about your personal life, Bradley says, his voice deliberately calm. You've been very private over the years. Why is that? Dylan's expression hardens immediately. Because it's private. That's what the word means. But you're a public figure. People are naturally curious. Curious doesn't mean entitled, Dylan shoots back. Just because I make music doesn't mean people get access to every part of my life. Bradley nods slowly. I understand that, but you've written songs that seem deeply personal. You put your emotions, your experiences into your work. Doesn't that invite people to wonder about the man behind the music? No, it invites people to listen to the music. That's it. The song is the thing I'm giving you. Me, my life, my personal whatever. That's separate. Is it though? Can you really separate the art from the artist? Yes, Dylan says firmly. You can. You should. The song exists on its own. It doesn't need me attached to it to mean something. Bradley leans forward again. But Bob, some of your most beloved songs, they're clearly about real relationships, real pain, real experiences, like Tangled Up in Blue or Blood on the Tracks as a whole. That album came out of a difficult period in your life. You don't know anything about my life, Dylan says. His voice low and controlled, but with an unmistakable edge. You know what I chose to put in songs? That's not the same thing. Fair point, Bradley concedes. But those songs resonated with millions of people because they felt authentic. Because they felt real. They were real. The songs were real. That doesn't mean they're documentary evidence of my biography. So you're saying the emotions were real, but the details might not be. I'm saying that art isn't journalism, Ed. I take things from life. I reshape them. I put them in a song. What comes out isn't a police report. It's a song. Bradley changes tack again. You've collaborated with a lot of artists over the years. What do you look for in a collaboration? Someone who understands the music. Someone who isn't trying to prove something or make it about them. Have you had collaborations that didn't work out because of ego? Dylan actually smiles at this, but it's not a warm smile. Ego is in every room where musicians gather, including this one. Bradley raises an eyebrow. Are you saying I have an ego? I'm saying everyone does. You meet every person watching this. The question is whether you let it run the show or not. And do you let your ego run the show? Sometimes probably more than I should, but at least I'm honest about it. The comment hangs in the air. Bradley's smile tightens just slightly. What does that mean? It means a lot of people pretend they don't have egos. They pretend they're just doing their job, just asking questions, just being objective. But there's ego in that too. The ego of thinking you're the one who's going to get the real story, the real answer, the thing nobody else could get. Bradley's expression doesn't change, but something shifts in his posture. Is that what you think I'm doing? I think you're doing your job, but let's not pretend this is just a friendly conversation. You have an agenda. You have questions you want answered. You have an idea in your head of what this interview should be, and you're not giving me that. No, I'm not. Why? Because it's not my job to fulfill your expectations. Ed, you asked me here. I showed up, but I'm not performing for you. Bradley takes a breath, visibly restraining himself. I'm not asking you to perform. I'm asking you to engage, to have a real conversation. This is a real conversation, just not the one you wanted. The producer behind the camera makes a subtle gesture, but Bradley ignores it. He's in deep now, and he knows it. This interview has become something else entirely. A battle of wills between two men who are both used to being in control. All right, Bradley says, shifting his weight. Let's talk about your legacy. How do you want to be remembered? Dylan laughs. A genuine laugh this time, but there's something bitter in it. I don't care how I'm remembered. I'll be dead. What does it matter? It matters to most people. Most artists think about how their work will be perceived after they're gone. Then most artists are wasting their time. You can't control what happens after you're dead. You can barely control what happens while you're alive. But surely you have some sense of what your music means, what it's contributed to culture. I have a sense that I made music. That's it. What it means, what it contributes, that's for other people to decide. I'm too busy living to worry about my legacy. Bradley pushes harder. But you've been making music for over 40 years. You've influenced countless artists. You've won awards, accolades. That has to mean something to you. Awards are nice. They look good on the shelf, but they don't change the music. They don't make a good song better or a bad song worse. So, recognition doesn't matter to you at all. I didn't say that. I said awards don't change the music. Recognition is different. When someone tells me a song helped them through a hard time, that matters. When someone says my music made them feel less alone, that matters. But that's not the same as legacy or cultural contribution or whatever abstract concept you're trying to get me to philosophize about. Bradley nods, processing this. So you care about the individual connection but not the broader impact. I care about the music being heard and felt. How many people hear it? What academics say about it 50 years from now? That's noise. Interesting way to put it. It's the truth. Bradley decides to take a risk. You know what I think? Bradley says, his voice steady but with a new intensity. I think you hide behind this whole enigmatic persona because it's easier than being vulnerable. Dylan's eyes narrow. Excuse me? You heard me. All this talk about the music speaking for itself. About not owing anyone anything. About privacy. I think it's a shield. I think you're afraid of letting people see who you really are. You don't know anything about what I'm afraid of, Dylan says, his voice dropping lower. Then tell me. Tell me something real, something that isn't wrapped in metaphor or deflection. What? So you can package it into a neat little soundbite for your show? So people can watch and feel like they finally understand Bob Dylan? That's not going to happen, Ed. Why not? What are you so afraid of? I'm not afraid. I'm protective. There's a difference. Protective of what? Of the part of me that still gets to be mine. The part that doesn't belong to the public or the critics or interviewers who think they're entitled to it. Bradley leans back, studying Dylan's face. You talk about entitlement a lot. Do you think I feel entitled to your story? I think you feel entitled to something. Otherwise, you wouldn't keep pushing. I'm pushing because this is my job. I'm supposed to ask difficult questions. I'm supposed to dig deeper than the surface. And I'm supposed to just open up and spill my guts because you asked nicely? No, but you're supposed to engage honestly. You agreed to this interview. I agreed to sit in this chair and let you ask questions. I didn't agree to become your therapy patient. The tension in the room is suffocating now. The crew behind the cameras is completely silent, watching this unfold like a car crash in slow motion. Bradley's jaw is tight, his professional composure starting to crack. You know what? Bradley says, let's talk about your conversion to Christianity. That was a public thing. You made albums about it. You preached from stage, but then you seemed to step away from it. What happened there? Dylan's face goes completely blank. That's personal. You made it public. You put it in your music. You talked about it in concerts. How is that personal? Because what I believe, what I feel about faith, that's between me and whatever higher power may or may not exist. I put some of that in songs. Yes, but that doesn't mean I owe you an explanation of my entire spiritual journey. I'm not asking for your entire spiritual journey. I'm asking what changed. You were so vocal about it, and then you weren't. People wondered, people still wonder. Let them wonder. Wondering is good for people. It means they're thinking, or it means you left them confused and uncertain about something you encouraged them to believe in. Dylan's hands gripped the arms of his chair. I never encouraged anyone to believe anything. I shared what I was going through at the time. That's it. If people took that as some kind of directive, that's their misunderstanding, not my responsibility. But you had influence, Bob. Whether you wanted it or not, you had influence. When you spoke about Christianity, people listened. Young people, vulnerable people, and then you moved on. Don't you think that matters? No, I don't, because I'm not a preacher. I'm not a guru. I'm not anyone's spiritual guide. I was a person going through something, and I expressed it the way I express everything, through music. If people built their faith on my music, that's a problem with their faith, not with my music. Bradley shakes his head slowly. That's incredibly dismissive. It's realistic. People need to build their lives on something more solid than a songwriter's temporary convictions. Temporary convictions. Is that what it was? I don't know what it was, Ed. I know what it felt like at the time. I know it was real to me then. Beyond that, I don't owe anyone a theological dissertation. You don't owe anyone anything. You've made that very clear. Bradley's voice has an edge now, sharp and cutting. But maybe that's the problem. Maybe that attitude is exactly why people struggle to connect with you. Why they feel like you've let them down over the years. Dylan stands up abruptly. Are we done here? We're not done. Sit down. I don't take orders from you. Bob, sit down. We're in the middle of an interview. Dylan remains standing, staring down at Bradley. An interview where you're trying to psychoanalyze me and tell me how I should feel about my own life. That's not an interview. That's an ambush. Bradley stands too, facing Dylan directly. It's only an ambush if you have something to hide. I'm asking legitimate questions about your public actions and public statements. If you can't handle that, maybe you shouldn't have agreed to be here. Maybe I shouldn't have. Maybe I should have trusted my instincts that told me this was a bad idea. Your instincts to avoid accountability. Your instincts to never let anyone get close enough to ask real questions. My instincts to protect myself from people who think they know me based on some songs and some newspaper articles. I'm trying to know you, Bob. That's what this whole thing is about. But you won't let me in. You won't let anyone in because there's nothing to let you into, Ed. You want there to be some deep, dark secret. You want there to be some revelation that makes everything make sense. But there isn't. I'm just a person who writes songs. That's all I've ever been. I don't believe that. I don't care what you believe. The two men stand facing each other. The camera's still rolling, capturing every second of this breakdown. Bradley takes a breath, visibly trying to regain control of himself. Bob, please sit down. Let's finish this properly. Dylan doesn't move for a long moment, his eyes locked on Bradley's. Finally, slowly, he sits back down. Bradley follows suit. The air between them is still charged, electric with unresolved tension. Let me ask you something, Dylan says quietly, his voice different now, more measured. Why does this matter so much to you? Why do you need to crack me open? Bradley blinks, caught off guard by the question being turned around. Because that's my job. Because people deserve to know the truth about the figures they admire. The truth, Dylan repeats. What truth? There's no single truth, Ed. There's just perspectives, interpretations, moments in time that we remember differently. So nothing is real. Nothing is knowable. I didn't say that. I said there's no single truth. You have your truth. I have mine. Neither one is complete. Bradley leans forward. Then help me understand your truth. Not the public version, not the myth. Your actual truth. Dylan looks at him for a long time before speaking. My truth is that I've spent my entire life trying to make sense of things through music. I've written thousands of songs, and I still don't have all the answers. I've been married, divorced, found faith, lost faith, gained it again in different forms. I've been praised, criticized, misunderstood, overly understood, and through all of it, the only constant has been the music. That's my truth, Ed. The music is the only thing that's never lied to me. But you've lied in your music, Bradley counters. You've admitted to making up stories, creating characters that aren't real. Fiction isn't lying. Fiction is truth, wearing a different face. When I write a character, I'm still putting real emotions, real experiences into it, just not in a literal way. So, when should we believe you and when shouldn't we? Believe the feeling, not the facts. That's all I can tell you. Bradley sits back, processing this. That's incredibly frustrating as an interviewer. You know that. I'm sure it is, but I can't make myself into something simpler just to make your job easier. There's almost a hint of warmth in Dylan's voice now. The anger from moments ago dissipating into something more resigned. Bradley notices it too, and his own demeanor softens slightly. Can I ask you something without you biting my head off? Bradley says. You can ask. I can't promise about the head biting. Do you ever wish you'd lived a different life? A quieter life away from all this? Dylan considers the question seriously. Sometimes, late at night when I can't sleep, I think about what it would have been like to just be a guy with a guitar, playing in small clubs, never getting famous, never having any of this weight attached to my name. But then I remember that I wouldn't have been able to make the music I made without all the experiences that came with this life. The good and the terrible. So no, I don't wish for a different life. I just wish people would stop expecting me to explain it. But that's human nature. We want to understand things, especially things that move us. I know, and I can't fault people for that. But understanding and explanation aren't the same thing. You can understand a song without me explaining every line. You can feel something without knowing exactly why you feel it. Bradley nods slowly. You really believe that? I have to. Otherwise, I'd go crazy trying to make sense of everything for everyone else. What about making sense of it for yourself? I make sense of it by living it. By continuing to write, to play, to exist in the world. That's the only sense making that matters to me. Even if people misunderstand you? Even then, misunderstanding is part of communication. You can't control how your words land in someone else's ears. You can only control what you say and hope for the best. Bradley looks down at his notes, then back up at Dylan. I want to apologize for pushing too hard, for making this more confrontational than it needed to be. Dylan shakes his head. You were doing your job. I wasn't making it easy. We both played our parts. Do you regret coming here today? Ask me in a year. Right now, I'm too close to it to know. Bradley manages a small smile. Fair enough. One more question. One more. If you could go back and tell your younger self one thing, what would it be? Dylan is quiet for a long moment, really thinking about it. When he speaks, his voice is soft, almost vulnerable. I'd tell him that the songs will outlast the confusion. That all the noise, all the criticism, all the praise, all the misunderstanding, it'll fade. But the songs will remain, and that has to be enough. Is it enough for you? Most days, yes. Some days, no. But that's life, isn't it? Some days things are enough, and some days they're not. You keep going anyway. Bradley nods, something like understanding passing between them. Thank you, Bob, for staying, for pushing back, for finally giving me something real. Don't thank me yet. You still have to edit this thing. Good luck making sense of it. I think I'll just let it be what it is. Raw and messy and complicated. Sounds about right. The two men sit in silence for a moment, the camera still rolling, capturing this strange peace that settled over the room after the storm. Bradley reaches over and shakes Dylan's hand. Dylan accepts it, and for the first time all interview, he looks almost relaxed. The interview ends not with a bang, but with a quiet acknowledgement that some conversations can't be neatly wrapped up. Some people can't be easily understood. And sometimes the struggle to connect is the whole point. Bradley got something from Dylan today. Maybe not what he wanted, but something real nonetheless. And Dylan, despite his resistance, gave something of himself, even if it came out sideways and defensive and wrapped in layers of protection. So there you have it. One of the most intense, uncomfortable, and ultimately fascinating interviews ever captured on camera. Did Dylan lose it? Or did he finally show us who he really is beneath all the myth and mystery? What do you think happened in that room? Drop a comment below with your thoughts. Hit that subscribe button, and let's keep this conversation going. What question would you have asked Bob Dylan if you were in Ed Bradley's chair?